Everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm really glad you're here today, because what we're about to talk about sounds like pure fantasy at first, yet it sits right at the strange intersection of history, human error, obsession, and the almost magical power of rarity. In this video, we're diving deep into the story, the mystery, and the possibilities behind a 1977 Liberty 5-cent coin from the United States, a coin that by face value should be worth exactly 5 cents, yet under extraordinary circumstances is imagined, rumored, and theorized to be worth as much as $242 million. This is not just a story about a coin. It's a story about how something ordinary can become extraordinary, how mistakes can become miracles, and how tiny details can completely rewrite value. At first glance, the 1977 5-cent coin looks unremarkable. It's the kind of coin you've probably held thousands of times without ever thinking twice. Nickel-colored, modest in size, quiet in design. It passed through vending machines, cash registers, pockets, and jars. Most people never looked at it closely, and that's exactly why the idea of one being worth hundreds of millions of dollars feels almost unbelievable. But in the world of numismatics, the study and collection of coins, unbelievable stories are often built on the smallest imperfections. To understand how such a valuation could even be discussed, we have to start with the nature of money itself. Coins are meant to be uniform. They are designed to be identical so they can be trusted, counted, and exchanged without question. The United States Mint exists to eliminate variation, not create it. And yet, because coins are mass-produced by machines, and machines are operated, maintained, and supervised by humans, perfection is never truly guaranteed. When something goes wrong in that process, even for a fraction of a second, a coin can be born that should not exist. The 1977 5-cent coin sits at a fascinating point in U.S. minting history. By the late 1970s, the mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet public demand. Speed mattered. Efficiency mattered. Millions upon millions of nickels were struck every year. When production volume reaches that scale, the potential for unnoticed errors increases. Most errors are caught and destroyed, but a tiny number slip through. And once they escape into circulation, they become ghosts hiding in plain sight. The standard 1977 5-cent coin features the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse. It was produced at multiple mint facilities, including Philadelphia and Denver, each marked by subtle mint marks or, in some cases, the absence of one. Under normal circumstances, even a well-preserved 1977 nickel is worth only a small premium over face value. But that assumption collapses completely if the coin displays extreme, unique, or compound errors. One of the most important ideas to grasp is that value in rare coins is not linear. It doesn't slowly climb from 5 cents to $10 to $100. Instead, it jumps. It leaps. When rarity crosses a certain threshold, when uniqueness is combined with historical curiosity and verified authenticity, the value can explode. This is how a coin that cost 5 cents to make can, in theory, be discussed in the same breath as priceless artworks and legendary treasures. Consider the concept of a wrong planchet error. A planchet is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin when it is struck by the dies. If a 5-cent coin were struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or even a different metal composition, the result would be instantly abnormal. Now imagine not just a common wrong planchet, but one that has never been officially documented before. A nickel struck on an experimental alloy. A transitional metal that was never approved for circulation. If such a coin existed from 1977, verified by metallurgical analysis and mint records, it would be in a category all its own. Then there are die errors, and this is where things become truly fascinating. A die is the engraved tool that stamps the design onto the coin. Dies can crack, break, shift, or be misaligned. Minor die cracks are common and usually not very valuable. But a catastrophic die failure that still produces a legible, dramatic, and visually striking coin is another story entirely. Imagine a 1977 5-cent coin with multiple overlapping strikes, rotated dies, and deep, three-dimensional distortion, all occurring together in a way that has never been recorded before. Now take that further. Imagine a coin struck not once, not twice, but several times, each strike slightly misaligned, creating a layered, almost sculptural effect. Jefferson's portrait duplicated, Monticello partially inverted, dates overlapping themselves. Coins like this exist in lesser forms, but a perfect storm of errors on a single coin is almost unheard of. In numismatics, R.A. Now, we're talking about a simple U.S. Liberty 5-cent coin from 1979, a coin with a face value so small that most people wouldn't even bother picking it up off the ground, yet a coin that, under extraordinary and highly specific circumstances, is believed to be worth as much as $249.5 million. This is not hype for the sake of drama. This is a deep dive into how errors, mistakes, mint mark anomalies, and historical possibilities can transform an everyday object into something legendary. The 1979 Liberty 5-cent coin was born into a world that didn't expect anything special from it. By the late 1970s, the 5-cent coin had become a quiet workhorse of American currency. It was everywhere and appreciated by almost no one. It wasn't silver anymore, it didn't carry the intrinsic metal value of earlier coins, and it didn't feature a dramatic redesign that would catch public attention. It was simply there, moving endlessly through hands, pockets, cash drawers, and vending machines, performing its duty without ceremony. Yet that very ordinariness is what makes the story so powerful. When something is expected to be identical to millions of others, even the smallest deviation becomes meaningful. In numismatics, the study and collection of coins, perfection is the baseline. Uniformity is the goal. And when uniformity breaks, history begins to whisper. To understand how a 1979 5-cent coin could even be discussed in the realm of hundreds of millions of dollars, we need to rethink what value really means. Most people assume value is tied directly to usefulness or material worth. A coin is worth what it can buy, or perhaps what it's made of. But collectors know something different. They know that value can emerge from scarcity, from mistakes, from the unrepeatable combination of events that produce something the world was never supposed to see. The United States Mint in 1979 was operating at massive scale. Millions upon millions of coins were being produced to satisfy the demands of a growing economy. Speed, efficiency, and output were the priorities. While quality control existed, it was not designed to catch every microscopic anomaly. When production reaches that magnitude, absolute perfection becomes statistically impossible. Errors are inevitable. The real question is how many survive. Most mint errors are caught and destroyed before coins ever leave the facility. Others are so minor that they go unnoticed and circulate freely. Only a very small fraction of errors are dramatic enough, rare enough, and well preserved enough to matter to collectors. And within that fraction, an even smaller group becomes truly significant. The standard 1979 Liberty 5-cent coin features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, a design that had already become deeply familiar to Americans. It was struck primarily at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, each with its own characteristics. At a glance, one 1979 nickel looks like every other. But at a microscopic level, that assumption can fall apart. One of the most important paths to extreme value lies in planchet errors. A planchet is the blank metal disc onto which a coin design is struck. In a perfect system, every planchet is identical in size, weight, and composition. In reality, planchets can be mixed, misfed, or incorrectly prepared. If a 5-cent coin is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, or even another country, the result is immediately abnormal. Now imagine a 1979 5-cent coin struck on a planchet made of an experimental alloy. During the late 1970s, the U.S. Mint, like many mints around the world, was quietly exploring alternatives to traditional coin metals due to rising costs and supply concerns. Not all experiments were publicly documented. Some were internal tests. If a test planchet made from an undocumented composition was accidentally fed into a press and struck with 5-cent dies, the resulting coin would represent a piece of hidden mint history. Such a coin would not only be rare, it would be unique. Its composition could be analyzed, its weight measured, its structure examined under powerful microscopes. If no known production coin matched it, and if no official records explained it, the mystery itself would become part of its value. Another major category of errors involves the dies themselves. Dies are the engraved steel tools that stamp designs onto coins. Over time, dies wear out, crack, chip, and sometimes fail catastrophically. Minor die cracks are common and usually add only modest value. But severe die failures that still produce a recognizable coin are something else entirely. Imagine a 1979 5-cent coin struck from a die that had suffered a massive internal fracture. The result could be a coin with deep fissures running through the design, distortions that make Jefferson's portrait appear stretched or duplicated, or Monticello appearing partially collapsed or incomplete. If you enjoy uncovering hidden stories, incredible possibilities, and the idea that everyday objects can secretly be extraordinary, you're in exactly the right place. In this video, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating and mind-bending concepts in modern coin collecting: how a single 1990 Liberty 5 cents coin from the United States, a coin with a face value of just 5 cents, could under extremely rare and specific circumstances be worth an astonishing $241 million. This is a story built on errors, mistakes, mint mark anomalies, and the powerful role of rarity, history, and human desire in defining value. At first glance, the 1990 5-cent coin seems utterly ordinary. It is the kind of coin most people have handled countless times without a second thought. It jingled in pockets, sat in jars, slid across counters, and disappeared into vending machines. It did its job quietly and reliably, never demanding attention. That is exactly why the idea of one being worth hundreds of millions of dollars feels almost impossible. But in the world of numismatics, the study and collection of coins, impossibility often begins with the smallest overlooked detail. By 1990, the United States Mint had become an incredibly sophisticated and high-output operation. Coins were produced in massive quantities every single day. Automation had improved efficiency, but it had not eliminated the possibility of error. In fact, the sheer volume of production meant that when something did go wrong, it could happen fast and quietly, sometimes before anyone noticed. Most mistakes were caught and destroyed. Some slipped through. And a microscopic fraction of those became something extraordinary. The 1990 Liberty 5 cents coin was struck at the Denver Mint, indicated by the D Mint mark on the coin. It features the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, a design that had been in use for decades. Nothing about this design screamed rarity or drama. It was intentionally conservative, stable, and recognizable. Yet within that uniformity lies the potential for deviation, and deviation is where value begins to grow. To understand how a 5-cent coin could even be discussed in the realm of $241 million, we have to step away from face value entirely. Face value is a social agreement. It is what a coin is meant to be worth in everyday exchange. Collector value, however, lives in a completely different universe. It is shaped by scarcity, uniqueness, condition, historical significance, and sometimes pure mystery. When these factors converge, numbers that once seemed absurd suddenly become plausible. One of the most important factors in extreme coin valuation is the presence of minting errors that occurred during the coin's creation. These are not damages caused later by circulation or misuse. They are flaws born at the moment of striking, when metal, pressure, and engraved steel interacted imperfectly. Such errors are physical evidence of a breakdown in an otherwise tightly controlled system. One major category of error that could dramatically elevate the value of a 1990 5-cent coin is a planchet error. A planchet is the blank metal disc that is fed into the coin press before it is struck. In an ideal process, every planchet is identical in weight, composition, and dimensions. In reality, planchets can be mixed, misrouted, or improperly prepared. Imagine a 1990 5-cent coin struck on a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination, such as a dime, a quarter, or even a foreign coin. The resulting coin would have incorrect weight, thickness, or composition. Such errors already exist and are collectible, but their value increases dramatically when the circumstances become more unusual. Now take this idea further. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, the U.S. Mint explored alternative metal compositions due to rising costs and long-term planning concerns. Not all experimental work was widely publicized. If an experimental or test planchet, made from a metal never approved for circulation, somehow entered the production line and was struck with 1990 5-cent dies, the resulting coin would be a singular artifact. Its metal content alone would spark intense interest, and its undocumented nature would push it into legendary territory. Metallurgical testing could reveal properties that do not match any known U.S. coin. Density, magnetic behavior, and elemental composition could all tell a story that official records do not. A coin like this would not just be rare, it would be unique, and uniqueness is the foundation of extreme value. Another powerful path to extraordinary worth lies in die errors. Dies are the engraved steel tools that impart the coin's design onto the planchet. They are used repeatedly under immense pressure, and over time they wear, crack, or fail. Minor die cracks are common and usually not very valuable. But severe die fa. Now, we're diving into the fascinating, almost unbelievable idea of a Liberty 5-cent coin from 1990 struck at the Philadelphia Mint, commonly known as the 1990p nickel, a coin with a face value of just 5 cents that, under extremely rare and specific circumstances, could be worth as much as $240 million. This is a story about errors, mistakes, mint mark peculiarities, hidden possibilities, and the powerful way rarity and human fascination can transform value. At first glance, the 1990p 5-cent coin appears completely unremarkable. It looks like countless other nickels that passed through American hands in the late 20th century. It lived quiet lives in pockets, purses, registers, jars, and couch cushions. Most people never looked at it closely, and that's exactly why the story behind its potential value is so compelling. The greatest numismatic legends often begin with coins that were never meant to be noticed. By 1990, the United States Mint was operating at a massive scale. Coin production was highly automated, efficient, and relentless. Millions upon millions of nickels were struck each year to meet everyday demand. The Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on nickels at that time, produced enormous quantities of 5-cent coins that blended seamlessly into circulation. The absence of a mint mark itself is a defining characteristic of the 1990p nickel, and as strange as it sounds, that absence can sometimes become just as important as a presence. Most people assume that automation eliminates mistakes, but in reality, large-scale production introduces a different kind of risk. When machines run continuously under intense pressure, even small deviations can create dramatic results. A fraction of a second, a misfed blank, a worn die, or a calibration issue can permanently alter a coin. These moments are rare, fleeting, and often invisible until much later. To understand how a 5-cent coin could ever be associated with a value like $240 million, we have to completely separate face value from collectible value. Face value is fixed by law and social agreement. Collectible value is shaped by scarcity, uniqueness, condition, historical significance, and desire. When all of those elements align in an extreme way, conventional pricing logic breaks down. The standard 1990p Liberty 5-cent coin features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, a design that had been in use for decades. It was intentionally conservative, familiar, and stable. The design itself was not meant to draw attention. But when something goes wrong during the striking of that familiar design, the result becomes instantly fascinating. One of the most important categories of errors that could elevate the value of a 1990p nickel lies in planchet anomalies. A planchet is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin when it is struck. In a perfect system, every planchet used for nickels would be identical in composition, thickness, and weight. In reality, planchets can be mixed, improperly prepared, or incorrectly fed into presses. Imagine a 1990p 5-cent coin struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. The coin might be thinner, thicker, lighter, or heavier than it should be. The design could appear weak or overly sharp depending on how the metal responded to pressure. These kinds of errors already exist and are collectible, but their value grows exponentially when additional factors are involved. Now imagine something even more extraordinary. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, the U.S. Mint was actively studying long-term metal supply and cost issues. Experimental alloys and test compositions were explored, not all of which were fully documented for public knowledge. If a test planchet made from an experimental metal somehow entered the regular production line at the Philadelphia Mint and was struck with 1990 nickel dies, the resulting coin would be a physical record of undocumented history. Such a coin would immediately stand out under scientific analysis. Its density, elemental composition, magnetic properties, and wear characteristics could differ from any known circulating U.S. coin. If no official explanation existed for its material, the mystery would become part of its value. A coin like this would not just be rare, it could be one of a kind. Die errors represent another major path to extraordinary worth. Dies are the hardened steel tools that transfer the coin's design onto the planchet. They endure enormous pressure and repeated use. Over time, they wear down, crack, or break. Minor die cracks are common and usually add little value. Severe die failures, however, are something else entirely. Imagine a 1990 5-cent coin struck from a die that had developed a deep internal crack or structural flaw. The resulting coin could show dramatic raised lines, distorted features, or missing elements of the design. Jefferson's Face Me. My dears, now, we're diving into the fascinating and almost unbelievable idea that a simple Liberty 5-cent coin from 1994, struck at the Philadelphia Mint and commonly known as the 1994 nickel, could under extraordinarily rare and specific circumstances be worth as much as $236 million. Yes, a coin with a face value of just 5 cents, something most people barely notice, could potentially carry a value greater than some of the world's most famous works of art. This story is about errors, mistakes, mint mark peculiarities, hidden possibilities, and the powerful way rarity, history, and human fascination can transform something ordinary into something legendary. At first glance, the 1994 Liberty 5-cent coin appears completely ordinary. It looks just like the nickels you've seen your entire life. It spent years passing through hands, registers, vending machines, and pockets, rarely held for more than a moment and almost never examined closely. That's exactly what makes the idea of its potential value so captivating. The greatest numismatic stories almost always begin with coins that were never meant to stand out. By 1994, the United States Mint was a highly advanced, high-volume operation. The Philadelphia Mint, in particular, was producing massive quantities of coins every year to keep up with circulation demands. Nickels were among the most heavily produced denominations, and consistency was the goal. The process was designed to produce coins that were as identical as possible, so they could be trusted, counted, and exchanged without hesitation. But perfection at that scale is more of an aspiration than a reality. The 1994 5-cent coin features the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, a design that had been in continuous use for decades. By the early 1990s, this design had become almost invisible to the public because of its familiarity. People didn't stop to admire it. They didn't question it. And that is exactly why any deviation from the norm becomes so important. To understand how a 5-cent coin could ever be associated with a value like $236 million, we have to completely separate the concept of face value from collectible value. Face value is assigned by law. It is stable, predictable, and utilitarian. Collectible value, on the other hand, is emotional, historical, and psychological. It is shaped by scarcity, uniqueness, condition, mystery, and the stories we attach to objects. When all of these factors converge in a single item, traditional ideas about worth collapse. One of the most significant contributors to extreme value in coins is the presence of genuine minting errors. These are not damages that happen after a coin enters circulation. They are mistakes that occur during the manufacturing process itself. They are physical records of moments when something went wrong inside a system designed to prevent exactly that. Planchet errors are one of the most intriguing categories. A planchet is the blank metal disc that is fed into the coin press before it is struck. In theory, every planchet intended for a nickel should be identical in size, thickness, weight, and composition. In practice, planchets can be mixed, misrouted, or improperly prepared. Imagine a 1994 5-cent coin struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. The resulting coin might be thinner, thicker, lighter, or heavier than expected. The design might appear weak, incomplete, or overly sharp depending on how the metal reacted to the striking pressure. Such errors already exist and are collectible, but their value increases dramatically when they are unusual, well-preserved, and undocumented. Now imagine something even more extraordinary. During the early 1990s, the U.S. Mint was continuously evaluating long-term production costs and metal supplies. Alternative alloys, experimental compositions, and test planchets were sometimes produced for internal evaluation. Not all of these experiments were widely publicized or fully documented for collectors. If a test planchet made from an experimental metal somehow entered the regular production line at the Philadelphia Mint in 1994 and was struck with 5-cent dies, the resulting coin would represent a piece of hidden mint history. Such a coin would immediately stand out under scientific examination. Its density, elemental composition, magnetic behavior, and wear characteristics could differ from any known circulating U.S. coin. If no official records could explain its existence, the mystery itself would become part of its value. A coin like this would not just be rare, it could be unique, and uniqueness is the cornerstone of extreme valuation. Die errors form another powerful category of possibility. Dies are the hardened steel tools that transfer the coin's design onto the planchet. They are subjected to enormous pressure over thousands of strikes, and over time they wear out, crack, or. My lovely friends, our today's last history is all about a Liberty 5-cent coin from 1996, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, commonly known as the 1996 P nickel. On the surface, it's a coin worth exactly 5 cents. It buys almost nothing. Most people barely notice it. And yet, under extraordinarily rare and specific circumstances, this very coin could be worth an astonishing $233.6 million. That number alone sounds unreal, but when you understand the world of minting errors, mistakes, mint mark anomalies, and the powerful role of rarity, history, and human obsession, the idea becomes far more fascinating than it first appears. The 1996 P Liberty 5-cent coin entered circulation during a time when American coinage was largely taken for granted. The mid-1990s were not a dramatic era for coins. There were no major redesigns of the nickel, no precious metal content, and no sense that anything unusual was happening. The 5-cent coin was simply a functional object, meant to move quickly from hand to hand without attracting attention. That invisibility is exactly what makes the idea of its hidden value so compelling. History often hides its greatest surprises inside the most unremarkable packages. By 1996, the United States Mint was operating at an immense scale. Coin production had become highly automated, efficient, and relentless. The Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally struck nickels without a mint mark, produced enormous quantities of 5-cent coins every year. The goal was consistency. Every coin was supposed to look and feel exactly the same. Uniformity was not just preferred, it was essential for public trust in currency. But when millions of coins are struck under immense pressure, perfection becomes a statistical illusion rather than a reality. The 1996 P 5-cent coin features the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse. This design had already been in use for decades by that point. It was so familiar that most people couldn't even describe it in detail without looking at a coin. That familiarity bred indifference, and indifference allowed extraordinary anomalies to pass unnoticed. To understand how a 5-cent coin could ever be associated with a value like $233.6 million, we need to let go of the idea that value is fixed. Face value is assigned by law. It is stable and predictable. Collector value, on the other hand, is fluid, emotional, and deeply tied to human behavior. It is shaped by scarcity, uniqueness, condition, historical importance, and the stories we tell ourselves about objects. When all of those elements align in extreme ways, traditional concepts of worth collapse entirely. One of the most important contributors to extreme coin value is the presence of genuine minting errors. These are not damages caused by wear, abuse, or accidents after the coin enters circulation. They are mistakes that occur during the minting process itself, at the precise moment when metal blanks meet engraved steel dies under tremendous pressure. These errors are physical evidence of a system briefly losing control. Planchet errors are among the most intriguing possibilities. A planchet is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin when it is struck. In theory, every planchet intended for a nickel should be identical in size, weight, thickness, and composition. In reality, planchets can be mixed between denominations, improperly prepared, or incorrectly fed into presses. Imagine a 1996 5-cent coin struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. The resulting coin might be thinner or thicker than normal. It might weigh too much or too little. The design could appear weak, incomplete, or unusually sharp depending on how the metal responded to pressure. These types of errors already exist and are collectible, but their value multiplies when they are rare, visually dramatic, and well preserved. Now imagine something even more extraordinary. During the 1990s, the U.S. Mint, like many mints around the world, was constantly evaluating long-term production costs and material availability. Experimental alloys, alternative metal compositions, and test planchets were sometimes produced for internal evaluation. Not all of these experiments were widely publicized or fully documented in ways that collectors could later trace. If a test planchet made from an experimental or undocumented alloy somehow entered the regular production line at the Philadelphia Mint in 1996 and was struck with 5-cent dies, the resulting coin would represent a piece of hidden history. Scientific analysis could reveal metal properties that do not match any known U.S. coin. Density, elemental composition, magnetic behavior, and wear characteristics might all tell a story that official records do not explain. A coin like this would not just be rare. It could be unique. And in the world of extreme collectibles, uniqueness is the most powerful force of all. A